Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of Distressed Deals Decoded. Today is the case of the vanishing mortgage when a dead deal turns into a dream outcome. That's going to be exciting, right? So, what
Yeah.
happens when an investor brings you a deal that's upside down, stuck in probate, heading into foreclosure, and everyone agrees it's a lost cause? Well, in today's episode, we're going to show you how a file just like that not only got rescued, but how the mortgage itself flat out disappeared. Welcome to Distressed Deals Decoded, where real estate problems meet real solutions. I'm your host today, Patrick Butler with Asset Resolution Advisors. So, a couple of quick thoughts. Most investors, or realtors even, walk away the moment they see a probate issue, a short sale, and a foreclosure all tangled together. But what if the biggest problem in the file is actually the biggest opportunity? Things that make you say, right? Imagine
Mhm.
buying a home where the after repaired value is $640,000, the as is value is 358, and the mortgage payoff 364. And then discovering, poof, the mortgage disappears. In distressed real estate, the deeper you dig, the more you win. Today's case proves exactly that. So by the end of today's episode, you'll know how probate delays, foreclosure challenges, short sales, and curative title work can actually combine into once in a career opportunities if you know how to navigate them. I'm going to take a moment and introduce my two co-hosts. Steve, that was on your docket, but I'll just take care of that right now. I'd like to introduce Mr. Steve Schiller, mortgage default loan servicer extraordinaire, 25 years in the default loan servicing business, operations head for Asset Resolution Advisors, and our other esteemed colleague, Mr. Juan Nicasio, also known as Mr. Acquisition, investor extraordinaire. So, Steve, why don't we go ahead and briefly position this episode and give us a little bit of the deal overview?
Thanks, Patrick. So this file came to us from one of our clients in New York. Really a perfect example of you just never know what you're gonna get when you get into these deals. At first it just looked one of our standard distressed assets, right? It was a short sale, right? Because you have the as is value in the 350 range, the payoff was
Mhm.
360. There were a couple lien issues. And that was really what we started with. There was a probate, so we were working on the probate. There was a pending foreclosure, so a lot of the nasty stuff we deal with. And the deal had been worked on for quite a while, and everybody was ready to walk away when we jumped in.
Mhm.
And that's really where we started uncovering and dealing with, oh wow, this is going to turn out to be really great for everybody.
Mhm. Nice. So, Juan, talk to us a little bit about the probate problem. You invest in real estate quite frequently.
Yeah.
I know
I
that's one of
mean,
the biggest headaches.
that's the biggest or the first roadblocks, right? Like most people don't really understand probate. There's just so much, and depending on the state, different directions that it can go in, and uh, history that we have to uncover. And so what we found is that the title was clouded, and the probate was actually incomplete. In these probate cases, sometimes you have folks that move away, families start to argue. They're not, obviously on the same page. They won't be found. You lose their phone numbers and things just come to a halt. A lot of times, the person that may be, let's just say, an executor of the estate, they may not even have the funds to pay an attorney, right? Uh, to get it all the way through. And so everything just comes to a standstill, right? Uh, no one has legal authority to sell the property. The heirs are not aligned, like I mentioned, or non responsive. So sometimes in that family feud, someone doesn't talk to the other brother, sister, auntie, grandpa, whomever is in the picture. And so no one responds, right? Investors get stuck and then unsure of the process because their business is to acquire property, right? At a discount, not really legal understanding. Because again, unless someone steps in, understands that process of probate, and is willing to invest in that process, typically it just comes to a stop, right? So at Asset Resolution Advisors, well, our role is that we step in to coordinate, right, the probate communication, because now we can separate families from the feud, and it's more so a third party, let's say an investor like myself, to contact set folks that may be involved in the probate and try to come to some sort of agreement or some type of plan to move the deal forward. We have to identify the legal steps required for the estate to move forward and then ensure that the property could legally be transferred once the short sale was approved. That's all that happened in this just one case that has so many roadblocks. So probate doesn't really kill deals. It's just the lack of understanding of those and how to piece them together that really kind of puts a wrinkle or a roadblock in these type of deals.
And I know Steve's going to talk a little bit about the curative piece of this because, so often at Asset Resolution Advisors, when we do see probate situations, they're strange. It's like, I don't know, they happen by accident. Nobody was aware or prepared, and all of a sudden it's a giant upheaval. And it just, like you said, lack of preparation kills the deal. So before we get to that piece, we're going to talk a little bit about the short sale and why this property was upside down, because again, we're seeing that a lot, more and more and more every single day because of the nature of today's real estate market. But in this particular case, the property had a little bit of deferred maintenance. The as is value was almost half what the as and after repaired value would be. And as we talked about, the mortgage payoff was right about the same amount as the as is value. And a little word for the wise here, we see it all the time in the real estate market. It's not really realistic to price a listing at a point where you can pay off the loan, pay off all the costs, and hope that you get away without doing a short sale. The value of the property is the value of the property. And realtors and investors, you need to be realistic with that. You need to crunch the numbers and say, hey, how close are we? And even if you're pretty close to it being an equity deal, count on it potentially being a short sale. So in this particular case, why it came to us as a short sale, there was no equity in the property whatsoever. Again, we could try and be hopeful and get more for the property than it's really worth, but we deal with reality. We don't deal with hopes because that's how we all get paid in this business. The probate delays certainly increase the risk of foreclosure. That's one thing that we do often stress to everybody is time is not on anybody's side in these transactions. We really need to compress time as much as possible, whether it's ordering title, getting reports, getting your valuations done, and definitely dealing with the lender, folks. Let's face it, they operate on dog years, not human
Mm-hmm.
years. And it's vital that we collectively work together to compress this. So was this a textbook short sale? The answer is absolutely yes. It was a deal with no room, no equity, and no exit strategy unless the lender agreed to take a loss. Again, when this came to us, everybody threw their arms up and they were just about ready to walk away from the deal.
You
Steve,
know,
talk to us a little bit
I
about
would like
Karen.
to add,
Oh,
well,
yeah,
I
go
would
ahead,
like
man.
to add this from both aspects, right? From an investor standpoint and from a realtor standpoint, because you mentioned something very important. The realtors always try to do their best to sell the property for more than the debt to try to avoid having to go through a short sale, which I understand, right? And if it can happen, then hallelujah. But the reality is, like you said, the value of the property is the value of the property. On the opposite side, the investor prices this or makes offers on these properties way lower than the as is value because they don't understand that this is the rules of engagement with the banks, right? So realtors, be realistic and understand what the as is value and how the short sale may solve that problem. And investors, you have to be a bit more realistic and understand, right, the process that the bank has to go through and what a real as is value, not what you want to put in your pocket value is, you know?
So true. Steve, talk to us, Goose.
All right. This was one of the more interesting deals actually I've been involved in the last 25 years. We were working the short sale. They talk about the probate here in a minute. We knew there was a probate. So the first part was dealing with that. Once we got past that, we were working the short sale. One of the things that came up as we were going through the short sale process with the lender, and it took us a little bit of time to get it out of them, was they said, "Hey, did you know that there was a foreclosure action and there was a contested deal and there's a whole lawsuit on this?" Our answer was nope, nobody told us. Um,
And
so
by the way, this deal was in New York, just to add some additional
Right.
complexity.
So they came back and there had been a lawsuit going back to the origination of these loans. So for many of you, remember the Great Recession, 08, 09, a lot of the loans that were established back then, there was some fraud and there was still lingering lawsuits from that going
Mm.
back 16, 17 years ago, which is quite shocking, but it goes back that far. And what ended up happening was there was a pool of loans in a security that got, basically had an attorney sued. The attorney, while doing this lawsuit, retired, handed this over to a colleague who I don't know how diligent he was in working it, but eventually got an outcome. And the outcome was that these group of loans, there were a bunch of them. It wasn't just one, it was, I think, 6 or 8 or 10 of them. They basically just said, wiped out, no more mortgages, free and clear, done. And there was a court order that did this. And quite interestingly enough, it was shocking, right? Because usually in our case, the seller knows about it, or the bank tells us about it, or something's going on that indicates what we were doing. We were literally in the throes of the short sale, negotiating price, getting people to come out to look at the property, and then all of a sudden it was, hey, no more mortgage. So it was quite an interesting situation.
To say the least.
At least.
So I guess this is typically why the distressed deals have to be audited. You can't assume anything is the case. And the biggest win in this file wasn't found in the numbers, but it was found in the courthouse of all things. And again, it came as a shock to everybody in the deal, the buyer, the seller, and the lender. Folks, that's one of those really weird situations. So Juan, as we move into the next segment, why would most people have walked away from a deal like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a typical reaction, right? Like the complexity of it and lack of understanding of probate, people decide they want to walk away. Short sale, they feel it's too long, complicated, they don't understand the process for that, they walk away. Foreclosure, they hear that, they walk away. Multiple unknowns, right? Like there is probably folks involved in the deal that they don't know how to find, right? And do that communication and or the lender, like where to reach out, because again, sometimes these loans do get sold multiple times, so you don't even know where they end up. So definitely they walk away. They just say, hey, this is just a dead deal, or it's not really worth my time, right? But here's the lesson: when everyone sees a dead deal, the professionals are seeing missing information. And so if you're able to piece the information together, well, then those create very big paydays. If nobody had investigated the foreclosure challenge or reviewed the court records, the property would have been lost or just at a standstill. The investor would have forfeited the massive opportunity, and the market would have assumed there was a mortgage that no longer existed. So imagine the win for this said investor. They went from a loan that was outstanding of $364,000. He or she, in essence, just put an additional $364,000 in their pocket. Most fix and flippers or investors buy and hold rental. It doesn't matter what type of investor. You might get lucky and do like $125,000 profit deal in 6 to 12 months to put $364,000 in equity in your pocket for looking at the missing information. I think is worth, right, taking that extra step or reaching out to folks that understand these distressed assets. Yes or no?
100%. And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in this particular case, this was the second buyer. And this buyer, by the way, only came to the table because they said, I've got an attorney that will deal with this probate issue. And that's when it
Exactly.
started to unravel. And by the way, Juan, to your point, there was so much equity in this property. The investor actually paid the homeowner some money for their time and effort. And it was a
Talk
total
about a
win for everybody.
yes, absolutely. Those are the best deals. Best deals.
Patrick, you're 100% correct. So the deal that when we got involved in from our standpoint, right, why it's so important to work with professionals, the investor had been working on this, I think, for almost 2 or 3 years, and
Mhm.
had been trying to figure out how to maneuver this. It was the probate was a little bit complicated because the one of the owners passed away, the other one didn't. They weren't married. It was mother-daughter situation, and just didn't know how to navigate it so that they can get clear title to a potential buyer. So that was the first part. As Patrick, you alluded to earlier, time is never on our side. And as time went on, the condition of the property went down even further, which now looking back, geez, if they would have been able to sell, if they would have been able to preserve the value of the property, they would have made even more. But unfortunately, there were some condition issues and things like that that popped up. But and once we got involved, one of the items we offer, and I think is very important in distressed assets, is we look at the deal holistically, and we found, hey, we need to deal with the probate, we need to deal with some title issues, and we knew what we had to get into, and we knew how to maneuver them before we ever went to market with a new offer, because we knew we had to find the right group, the right person, the right attorney for that probate, because
Mhm.
without it we wouldn't be able to clear anything. And then once we were able to do that, we knew a path on title, we were able to then say, okay, let's go list it. And lo and behold, we had a buyer. They knew what to do because it was marketed properly, knowing that somebody needed to do some type of probate. So all those things lined up in order to get this moving faster, which is really the key to a lot of these distressed deals.
No question about it. In fact, I think the moral to the story for today's episode rings true for even traditional squeaky clean real estate. So in distressed real estate, things are not always what they appear. They could look really messy on the outside, and in fact, they may well be, by the way. But the deeper you look, sometimes the more opportunities you'll uncover. I used to coach real estate agents when I ran brokerage offices, and one of the things I always shared with agents when talking with home sellers that were unrealistic about the value of their home was dig deeper. Don't just ask them what they want. Ask them why they need to get what they're asking for. What is their holistic, Steve? I'm going to use your word, their holistic plan. Where are they going? Why are they going there? And put the big picture together, because then, and I like to use the term jigsaw puzzle, when more of the pieces are flipped over, the picture comes very clear. In distressed, even more importantly. So things to do. Always check foreclosure status. If the homeowner is behind on their payments, if it's a vacant property and the homeowner is absentee, you can almost rest assured that there's going to be some sort of default there. Check for probate defects and mortgage defects. Now, when I say check for them, you can check for them yourself. It's not rocket science, but it does take time and it takes
Mhm.
expertise, which is why we're here. We do this work and we get paid by the bank. So, folks, it makes perfect sense to reach out to us on these transactions. Never rely solely on surface level information. Bring in your specialists early and bring us in often. We specialize in curative phase discoveries. That's what we do. In fact, before we process a short sale, in many cases, we've got to prep the property to become a short sale. And that might be title curative, it might be probate, it could be liens, it could be solar panel liens,
Mhm.
which we're going to talk about in an upcoming webinar. We can help turn these dead deals into profitable closings. And if not, you'll know that right up front. We're quick to offer a no, and the yeses sometimes take a little bit more work. So, Steve, how can agents and investors apply this today?
Great question. The first thing that we work with agents, investors to understand what the deal is, right? Sometimes you want a deal so bad you'll do just about anything to make it a deal, and it's just not a deal. We
Mhm.
highly encourage everybody to really have just the most basic understanding of what you're getting into. Understand if there's a foreclosure, when is the foreclosure, what you need to do. Understand if there are multiple people on the property, right, who own the property, to make sure that you're dealing with all the owners. So just a little bit of due diligence will go a long way, making sure that the deal is primed and ready to go and worth your time and effort. So that's really the first one. The second piece that I would always recommend is, make sure you have that checklist and timeline, right? Know exactly from a probate standpoint how long it's going to take, when you need to start things, so that again you're not wasting time. Some probates can take a couple months, some can take longer, some can take 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 months. It just depends. You don't want to start your sale too early and have everything quote unquote expire from a time frame. You want to make sure that everything lines up, and also keep track of that foreclosure. You don't want the foreclosure to overtake what's going on.
Truth, truth, truth.
Third, and again, it's a little bit of self-aggrandizement here, but partner with the last mid team, right? Somebody
Yes.
who understands what's going on, right? So the importance of the nuances of the deals is so important to save you time. These do take a lot of time already to begin with, and when you literally have to start over, it's so frustrating. Great example is, I've seen this a lot. There's a probate that needs to happen. Somebody gets access to the loan and they say, okay, we're ready to close. And guess what? Title won't let you close because you don't have probate finished. You can't,
Mhm.
the mortgage servicer, the lender, they won't let you sign documents because probate's not done. And you did all this work for weeks and weeks and weeks just to find out, oh, probate's going to be another, 2 months, 3 months. And so now you're back to sitting and waiting. And from the servicer side, from the mortgage lender side, they have to start that process all over again from the start.
Mhm.
So all of the lining up everything is really important, and knowing what those time frames are is important, which is why we recommend, save you time and effort, is to work with a loss mitigation team. Um,
Yep.
fourth point, which I think also, what we learned in this deal is, never assume what the mortgage balance is, right? You really have to verify it. And there are multiple ways to do it. There, professionals like ourselves, we know how to get the information from the actual mortgage servicer. There are other legal channels to do it, but all sorts of things pop up. We've talked about in previous podcasts, and this had a pending lawsuit. There are partial claims. There are junior liens. There are all sorts of different items that could pop up. It's very, very important that you understand what mortgage and what balances are on there. And the last
Mhm.
piece, the last tip is, when deals look impossible, like they cannot be worked out, usually means there's hidden value. Sometimes there's
Mhm.
not, but a lot of times there is. And it's a matter of decoding what's going on in that deal so that you can find that value.
Nice way to pull the
All
title into
right.
the close. So Juan, bring us home, baby.
Yeah, man, this case really proves the one thing, right? Distressed deals rewards people willing to dig deeper. What looks like a dead deal became a massive, not win, but win-win for all parties involved. Simply because someone checked the court records. I mean, something as, I guess, simple, maybe not so simple as that, but the information was already there. So look, guys, you've been watching Distressed Deals Decoded. I encourage you guys to please like this episode, subscribe to our channel, turn on the notification bell so that you are prompted when new episodes will come out. We want to continue to do this and provide value to the community of real estate professionals so that they can manage and move their deals along. If you want asset resolution advisors to review your files, I highly encourage you to join our Skool community or reach out to us directly. So until next time, my fine folks, keep looking for deals everyone else is missing.